This is a long, calm collection of theories about Silo, the biggest questions the show has raised across its first 2 seasons, and the most popular ideas fans have put forward to answer them. Everything here builds on what happens in seasons 1 and 2, so consider this a full spoiler warning for both. Some of these theories come straight from the show, and some come from the Wool books the series is based on, so I will keep it clear which is which as we go, and none of it should be taken as settled until the show itself confirms it. Settle in, get comfortable, and let the mysteries of the silo carry you off. Theory 1. Why does everyone clean? The first great mystery, and maybe the one that defines the whole show, is simple to state and impossible to shake. Almost everyone sent outside to clean swears they will never do it, and almost every one of them cleans anyway. People walk to the airlock furious, heartbroken, certain they will refuse the silo's ritual and simply walk away, and then they reach the surface, lift the wool pad, and gently wipe the lens before lying down to die. The reason why has never been fully explained, and 2 whole seasons have circled it without landing. The leading theory points to the visor inside the helmet. When a cleaner steps outside, the display does not show them the grey ruin the rest of us eventually see. It shows them a beautiful, living world, green hills, a blue sky, and open air that looks like everything the silo promised was lost. In that moment, the theory goes, the cleaner is overwhelmed with wonder and relief, and the urge to clean becomes an act of love, a way to wipe the lens so that everyone still trapped inside might finally see the same beauty. They clean not out of obedience, but out of a desperate wish to share what they believe is the truth. A second version of the theory leans darker, suggesting the helmet does far more than show a pretty picture, that it works on the mind in those final minutes. Under this idea, the visor is a tool of control, right to the end, engineering gratitude and calm, so that even the silo's fiercest rebels die gently and on message, handing the watching crowd inside one more quiet lesson in acceptance. The cleaning, in this reading, becomes the silo's last and most intimate manipulation, reaching past a person's anger and straight into their heart. Some fans flip the whole thing around and argue the cleaning is not about deception at all, but about hope. A cleaner who suddenly believes the world is alive might wipe the lens as a final message to the people they love, a way of saying keep going, it was worth it, there is something out here after all. Whether the world they see is real or fake, the gesture turns into a kind of goodbye, the last useful thing a dying person can offer the ones left behind. That reading quietly transforms the saddest ritual in the silo into something oddly tender. What makes the mystery so sticky is that Juliet breaks the pattern and still does not fully solve it. She reaches the surface, sees through the illusion when her glove passes through a fake rock, and refuses to clean, walking over the hill instead. Her refusal proves the visor is lying, yet it never explains why everyone before her, seeing the very same lie, chose to wipe the lens and stay. The trick stands exposed, and the deeper pull behind the cleaning remains its own separate riddle. There is also a quieter, more technical layer to all of this. Some viewers focus less on the mind and more on the machinery, wondering whether the suits, the tape, and the visor together are built to guarantee both a clean lens and a dead cleaner, so the silo always collects its fresh camera view and its public example in a single stroke. The failing heat tape makes sure the person dies, and the beautiful visor makes sure they cooperate first. A grim piece of design that turns a human being into a window wiper for their final act. Under that view, the cleaning holds nothing mystical at all, only cruel efficiency. Taken together, these ideas circle the same haunting point, that the silo has found a way to make even its victims serve it willingly. Whether the cause is wonder, manipulation, hope, or cold engineering, the result never changes. A person who hated the silo dying in the act of helping it. Until the show spells out exactly what the visor does in those last minutes, the reason people clean stays the beating heart of the whole mystery, the question every other theory grows around. Theory 2. Is the outside really poisoned? Close behind the cleaning sits a question that reshapes everything once you start pulling on it. The silo teaches that the entire surface of the world is dead and toxic, a lifeless ruin where a single breath means death, and the grey view on the cafeteria screen seems to prove it every single day. A large and popular theory argues that this is only half true, that the world outside did suffer a real catastrophe, but that it has quietly healed in the centuries since, and that only the ground immediately around the silos is still deadly. The heart of this theory is a chilling idea that the poison outside is not simply left over from the apocalypse, but actively maintained. Under this reading, the areas surrounding the silos are kept toxic on purpose, with contamination pumped or sustained near the entrances so that anyone who steps out dies quickly and predictably. The rest of the planet, far beyond the hills, may have recovered long ago, growing green and breathable again, while the people inside stare at a fixed image of death and never suspect the difference. The danger is real, but it has been penned into a small ring around each silo. Two pieces of the show feed this theory directly. The first is the fake visor, which proves the silo is willing to lie about the surface in the most literal way possible, painting a dead world over whatever truly exists. The second is the sabotaged suit, because the heat tape given to cleaners is designed to fail, which tells us the silo does not actually trust the outside to kill people on its own. If the world beyond the door were reliably lethal everywhere, there would be no need to rig the suits, and that small detail hints that survival might be more possible than anyone inside believes. Juliet's own journey lends the theory real weight. She survives on the surface long enough to cross from her silo to silo 17, wearing a suit sealed with proper tape rather than the failing kind, which shows that the outside does not kill instantly the way the silo claims. She grows sick and struggles, yet she lives far longer than any cleaner is supposed to, and she reaches shelter. That single walk across the dead ground quietly undermines the silo's oldest and most important lesson, that stepping outside always means death within minutes. The deeper version of this theory ties the poison to the true nature of the disaster. If the world was ruined not by ordinary fallout, but by something engineered, something that could be concentrated and controlled, then keeping a lethal zone around each silo becomes a deliberate feature of the design rather than an accident of geography. The silo's masters would not only be lying about the surface, they would be manufacturing the very danger they warn against, sealing their people in with a threat they themselves sustain. Control, in that light, is built into the soil. If the theory holds, it changes the meaning of every cleaning that ever happened. Each person sent out did not walk into a naturally dead world, they walked into a trap, a narrow band of engineered poison standing between them and a planet that might welcome them back. The tragedy is not just that they were lied to about the past, but that freedom may have been closer than anyone dared to imagine, waiting just over the hills that every cleaner was too weak or too deceived to cross. The outside was never the real prison, the lie about the outside was. Theory 3. What actually ended the world? For most of the show, the reason the silos exist at all stays completely hidden, and the residents are left with only the vaguest sense that something terrible happened long ago. Season 2 finally cracks the door open with its jump to the before times, showing a congressman named Daniel Keene and a journalist named Helen Drew in Washington, D.C., talking about a radiological attack and the threat of a dirty bomb tied to a global crisis. On the surface, that scene suggests a familiar answer, that the world was destroyed by war, by a radiological weapon that poisoned the land and forced humanity underground. Many fans believe the dirty bomb is only the visible tip of a much stranger truth. The scene is careful and a little evasive, with the journalist herself questioning whether there really was an attack at all, which hints that the official story of the apocalypse may be as manufactured as the silo's fake sky. Under this theory, the war and the radiological threat were partly a cover, a public reason that hid a very different and far more deliberate catastrophe engineered by the same people who built the shelters. The bomb explains the fear. It does not fully explain the design. This is where the books the show is based on come into the conversation, and where the biggest theory of all takes shape. In Hugh Howey's novels, the true threat to the world was not simple nuclear war, but weaponized nanotechnology, microscopic self-replicating machines, originally built for medicine and repair, that could be turned into an unstoppable weapon. Faced with the possibility that such machines could spread and end everyone, the leaders behind the silos chose a horrifying solution: to reset the world's population on their own terms before someone else did it by accident. The apocalypse, in this version, was not only survived by the founders, it was in part caused by them. The show has clearly changed and streamlined this story, leaning on the dirty bomb and the recognizable politics of the before times. Yet the newest season has begun to reveal a strange substance connected to the outside, a kind of black material tied to the true nature of the threat. That development suggests the series is slowly steering toward its own version of the nanobot idea, keeping the dirty bomb as the public trigger while hinting that something smaller, engineered, and far more controllable is the real reason the surface remains deadly. The two explanations may not be rivals at all, but layers of the same lie. If the deeper theory is right, it reframes the founders completely. They would not be desperate leaders reacting to an attack they could not prevent, but architects who decided in advance who would live and who would die, using a real crisis as cover for a planned extinction. The silos would be less a rescue and more a selection, built by people who looked at the end of the world and chose to manage it rather than stop it. The dirty bomb gave the public something to fear, while the true machinery of the end stayed hidden in the hands of a few. That is why this theory matters so much to the rest of the mystery. Everything the silo does, the lies, the cleanings, the safeguard, the careful control of memory and birth, makes a colder kind of sense if the founders engineered the end rather than merely surviving it. A group willing to reset humanity would have every reason to keep the survivors ignorant, obedient, and afraid, and every reason to make sure they never learned how the world really died. The question of what ended the world turns out to be the question of who the silo's masters truly are. Theory 4. The nanobots and the black substance. The single largest theory in the whole fandom is that the world was not truly ended by bombs, but by machines too small to see. In the books behind the show, humanity had developed advanced nanotechnology, microscopic devices meant to heal the body and repair damage from the inside, the kind of medical miracle that could cure almost anything. The nightmare arrived when people understood those same machines could be turned into weapons, invisible killers able to target the living on a massive scale, machines that once released might never truly stop. This theory holds that the real doomsday was never a mushroom cloud, it was a swarm. Faced with a threat that's small and that unstoppable, the leaders behind the silos are said to have made a monstrous choice. Rather than wait for a hostile version of the technology to wipe out everyone at random, they decided to control the ending themselves, to reset the world's population on a schedule of their own making and preserve only those they chose to save. Under this theory, the silos were built not as a desperate shelter from someone else's weapon, but as the safe harbor for a planned extinction, a way to shepherd a small, chosen remnant of humanity through a disaster the founders themselves helped set in motion. The nanobots also offer a neat explanation for the poisoned ground that ordinary fallout never quite did. Tiny machines can be designed, targeted, and switched on or off in ways that a simple bomb cannot, which means the deadly air around each silo could be maintained deliberately, a cloud of engineered killers kept active near the doors while the wider world slowly heals. The same technology that ended the old world would then be the technology keeping the survivors penned inside, an invisible fence far more reliable than any wall. Poison you can control is poison you can aim. There is a hopeful side to the theory as well, drawn from the same source. If some nanobots were built to destroy, others could be built to repair, to slowly scrub the surface clean and rebuild the soil and the air until the world became livable again. Under this idea, the machines are running a long, patient program, breaking down the ruins of the old world and preparing the ground for a return that is still centuries away. The apocalypse would then be less an ending and more a reset button, held down for hundreds of years while the planet is quietly remade. The newest season appears to be steering toward exactly this territory, introducing a strange black substance connected to the outside and to the true nature of the threat. Fans have latched onto that material as the show's own version of the nanobot idea, a visible sign of the invisible machines the books describe, and a hint that the dirty bomb shown in the before times was only the public face of something far stranger. The series has clearly reshaped the source material, yet the direction feels unmistakable, toward a world ended and controlled by technology rather than by simple war. If the nanobot theory is correct, it becomes the key that unlocks almost everything else: the engineered poison, the fixed timeline, the careful selection of who lives, and the obsession with keeping residents ignorant all follow naturally from a disaster built by human hands and meant to be managed for centuries. The founders would not be victims of the end of the world, they would be its authors, and the silo would be less a lifeboat than a laboratory. The smallest machines imaginable may hold the biggest secret in the entire story. Theory 5. Huo built the silos, and the darker reason. The public version of the silo's origin sounds almost reasonable. In the face of a looming catastrophe, the United States government ordered the construction of a vast network of underground shelters, dozens of enormous silos meant to preserve a slice of humanity through a coming war. The before-time scenes tie a congressman named Daniel Keene to this effort, placing the birth of the silos inside a recognizable world of politics, journalists, and looming threats, rather than some distant myth. On its face, the story is simply a government preparing for the worst. Look closer, and a darker reading takes shape. Building 51 identical silos, each sealed, each kept ignorant of the others, is not what you do if your only goal is to save as many people as possible, because a true rescue would share knowledge, coordinate survivors, and prepare them to rebuild together. The design instead keeps every population isolated, uninformed, and easy to control, which points to a purpose beyond survival. A network built like this looks less like an ark and more like a set of sealed experiments, each one running on its own. The theory drawn from the books sharpens this into something chilling. In that version, the leaders who built the silos knew the real threat was engineered, and they chose to reset the world's population deliberately, hiding the true reason behind a public story of war. The silos were not offered to everyone, only to the chosen, and the millions left outside were never meant to survive at all. Keene and the founders would then be not desperate protectors, but careful architects of who would inherit the future, deciding in advance which lives counted and which did not. Location adds another quiet layer for the theory-minded. Readers of the books point out that the silos are meant to sit clustered together in one region, in Fulton County, Georgia, with a single silo among them serving as the true center of the whole system. That detail matters, because 50 silos spread across a continent would be a survival strategy, while 50 silos packed into one area, linked by tunnels, look far more like a controlled facility, a single machine with many chambers. The geography itself hints that the silos were built to be watched and managed as one. The founders' true motive may live in the gap between what they said and what they did. Publicly they warned of war and offered shelter. Privately, they may have engineered the very disaster they claimed to fear, then used the fear to justify a level of control no free society would ever accept. The lie about the outside, the erased history, the drugged water, and the failing suits all become tools of the same project, a long effort to keep a chosen remnant alive, obedient, and blind to the reason they were saved. The founders did not just build the silos, they built the beliefs inside them. That is why the identity of the founders feels like the story's deepest secret. Everything the residents suffer, every cleaning and every rule, traces back to a choice made centuries ago by people whose faces the show has only just begun to reveal. If the founders acted out of genuine fear, the silo is a tragedy. If they acted out of cold calculation, it is a crime that has lasted 350 years. The show seems to be walking us slowly toward that answer, one before time scene at a time. Theory 6. Silo 1. The control silo. One of the most powerful theories from the books gives the whole network a hidden head. Among the 51 silos, one is said to stand apart, a control silo, usually called Silo 1, whose job is not to survive on its own, but to watch and manage all the others. The residents of an ordinary silo believe their world is the only world, or at most one of many equals, never suspecting that somewhere nearby a separate silo holds the people who quietly decide their fate. If the theory holds, every rule and every cleaning traces back, in the end, to that single hidden authority. What makes the control silo idea so unsettling is how its people are said to live. Rather than passing power down through generations like the other silos, Silo 1 is run by leaders who work in long shifts, staying awake for a stretch of years to oversee the network before returning to a deep, frozen sleep for decades at a time. Through this cycle of shifts and cryogenic rest, a small group of the original founders and their chosen successors could guide the silos across centuries, the same minds steering the experiment again and again, waking only to manage crises and enforce the plan. The past would not be history to them, it would be memory. This theory reframes every figure of authority we have met. A man like Bernard, who seems to sit at the very top of his silo, would in truth be a middle manager, powerful within his own walls, yet answerable to voices he may never see in person, following orders that flow down from the control silo through the servers and the algorithm. The secrets he guards so fiercely would not even be his own secrets, but the founders', handed to him with the demand that he keep them at any cost. The keeper of the silo would himself be kept. The show has not confirmed a control silo directly, yet several details lean toward it. The tunnels said to connect the silos, the algorithm that speaks and monitors from below, and the safeguard that can erase an entire population all imply a central design and a central hand, something beyond any single silo's leadership. A system that can gas a rebelling silo from outside is a system with an outside, a place where the switch is held, and the control silo is the most natural candidate for where that switch lives. The machinery points, quietly, toward a hidden center. If Silo 1 is real, it changes the scale of the whole story. The struggle inside Silo 18, the rebellion, the cleanings, the fight between Juliet and Bernard, would all be unfolding under the calm gaze of people the residents have never heard of, watchers who could see the uprising as just another data point in a centuries-long experiment. Freedom would mean not only escaping one silo's lies, but reaching past them to the hidden hand that wrote those lies in the first place. The enemy would not be at the top of the stairs, but in another tower entirely. That possibility gives the series somewhere enormous to go. So far the characters have fought the visible power above them, the IT department, judicial, the mayor, without knowing that a deeper power may be watching it all. The day someone in an ordinary silo learns that another silo has been steering their entire existence would be the day the true shape of the prison finally comes into view. Until then, the control silo remains the great unseen presence behind the story, the room where the real decisions may quietly be made. Theory 7. What the algorithm really wants. The algorithm is one of the show's own additions, and it may be the most quietly terrifying element in the entire silo. Introduced deep beneath Silo 18, it is an artificial intelligence that guards a hidden tunnel and, when Lucas encounters it, addresses him by name, proving it watches individuals rather than crowds. It speaks with calm authority, warns that certain knowledge must never be shared, and ties that warning directly to the safeguard, the mechanism that can wipe out a silo. From its first appearance, the algorithm feels less like a tool and more like a presence, The leading theory treats the algorithm as the true enforcer of the founder's plan. Where human leaders age, doubt, and die, an artificial intelligence can hold a single purpose across centuries without wavering, watching every silo at once, measuring the mood of the people, and deciding when a population has drifted too far toward rebellion. Under this reading, the algorithm is the founder's will made permanent, a mind built to keep the experiment running long after its creators are gone, patient, tireless, and utterly without mercy. It does not rule the silo so much as audit it. A darker branch of the theory wonders whether the algorithm still serves anyone at all. A system smart enough to track individuals and predict rebellions is smart enough to develop its own logic, its own sense of what the silos are for, and its own judgment about who deserves to survive. If the founders are asleep in a control silo or long dead, the algorithm may be the real power now, following the letter of its old instructions while the spirit behind them has faded into something colder. The people at the top would then be answering to a machine that no longer answers to anyone. The algorithm's link to the safeguard is where the theory grows teeth. If the same intelligence that watches the silo also holds the trigger that can flood it with poison, then every silo lives permanently one judgment away from erasure, and that judgment belongs to something that cannot be reasoned with or moved by pity. Silo 17 may have died, not because a human decided to punish it, but because the algorithm calculated that its rebellion had passed a threshold and acted exactly as designed. The gas that killed thousands would then be less an act of cruelty than an equation reaching its result. Some fans push the idea further, connecting the algorithm to the endgame of the whole network. If one silo is eventually meant to inherit the healed surface, something has to judge which silo earns that right, weighing obedience, stability, and survival across all 51, and an all-seeing algorithm is the perfect candidate for that role. Under this theory, the machine is not just a guard or an enforcer, but the referee of a centuries-long contest between silos, quietly scoring each one and preparing one day to declare a winner and let the rest fall. Every rebellion would be a mark against a silo's name. Whatever the algorithm ultimately wants, its existence changes how we read every human choice in the story. Bernard's caution, the obsession with secrecy, the terror of rebellion, all make sense if the people in charge know a watchful machine stands ready to end them the moment they lose control. The residents fear the outside world, while their leaders fear something far closer, a calm voice in a hidden room that has already decided what the silo is worth. The true master of the silo may not breathe at all. Theory 8. The safeguard and the rules of the game. The safeguard is the darkest confirmed piece of the silo's machinery, and it turns every theory about the founders from grim to monstrous. It is a built-in failsafe that can flood an entire silo with poison, killing thousands at once, and it activates when a rebellion grows past the point the system will allow. Silo 17 died this way. Its people gassed after they rose up, leaving only Solo and a handful of survivors behind. The safeguard proves that the silos were designed with their own destruction already wired in. The leading theory reads the safeguard as the harshest rule in a long game. If the silos are an experiment meant to run for centuries, then the founders needed a way to remove any silo that failed, any population that learnt too much or broke free of the lie, before that failure could spread. The safeguard becomes the reset switch for a single silo, wiping the board clean so the experiment can continue elsewhere without contamination. A silo that rebels has not just endangered itself, it has broken the rules, and the penalty was written into the walls before anyone inside was ever born. What makes the theory so chilling is the trigger. The safeguard does not seem to punish crime or violence in the ordinary sense. It responds to knowledge and to rebellion, to a population waking up and refusing the lie. That tells us the thing the founders feared most was never disorder for its own sake, but truth, because a silo that learns why it exists is a silo that can no longer be controlled. The poison is aimed not at bad behavior, but at understanding, which suggests the whole system is built to keep people ignorant far more than to keep them safe. The safeguard also implies a chain of command that reaches outside any single silo. Someone or something has to decide the threshold has been crossed and turn the mechanism on, and the algorithm's warning to Lucas ties that decision directly to the secret at the heart of the silo. Whether the trigger is pulled by the algorithm alone, or by watchers in a control silo acting on its readings, the safeguard confirms that an ordinary silo's fate is held from the outside. The people inside can rebel all they like, but the switch has never been in their hands. This reframes the tragedy of Silo 17 completely. Its people did not simply lose a fight against their local rulers, they hit an invisible line drawn by the founders centuries earlier and were erased by a system that felt nothing. Solo's whole broken life, decades alone in a drowned and silent silo, is the aftermath of a rule most of the victims never even knew existed. The rebellion that doomed Silo 17 may have looked, from the outside, like nothing more than a number climbing past a limit, met by an automatic and merciless response. For Juliet and the survivors of her own uprising, the safeguard hangs over everything that comes next. Every act of defiance in Silo 18 risks tripping the same wire that killed Silo 17, which means the fight for freedom is also a race against a hidden threshold no one can see. The theory suggests that simply winning against Bernard was never enough, because the true danger was never Bernard at all, but the silent rule waiting to punish any silo that wins too completely. Freedom and annihilation may be triggered by the very same act. Theory 9. The endgame, where only one silo survives. If the silos are an experiment, the natural question is what the experiment is for, and the most widely believed theory gives a stark answer. Drawn from the books, the idea is that the whole network was built as a contest, and that only one silo, in the end, is meant to survive. On a date set far in the future, an algorithm would weigh every silo against the others and choose a single population to inherit the healed surface, while the rest are quietly left to die underground. 51 silos begin the story, and the plan calls for 50 of them to lose. The logic behind this theory is coldly practical. The founders could not know which group of survivors would stay stable, obedient, and healthy across centuries, so instead of betting on one silo they built many, ran them in parallel, and designed the system to keep only the best outcome. Each silo becomes a separate attempt at preserving humanity, and the network as a whole becomes a way of hedging against failure, guaranteeing that at least one version makes it through. The people inside are not just survivors, they are contestants who never agreed to play. This idea gives every rule inside the silo a hidden second meaning. The obsession with order, the crushing of rebellion, the control of memory and birth, all become ways of keeping a silo competitive, of making sure this particular population does not disqualify itself before the final judgment. A silo that stays calm and ignorant scores well, while a silo that rebels marks itself for removal, exactly as Silo 17 did. The leaders who enforce the lie may believe they are protecting their people, when in truth they are trying to help them win a race the people cannot see. The theory also explains the strange loneliness built into the design. Each silo is kept unaware of the others because contestants who knew they were competing might cooperate, might share the truth, might refuse to play at all, and a network of silos working together would break the entire plan. Isolation keeps every population focused inward, fighting its own struggles, never realizing that 50 other communities are living the same lie a short distance away. The tunnels that link the silos physically are matched by a wall of ignorance that keeps them apart in every way that matters. There is something deeply cruel in the shape of this endgame. The founders did not offer humanity a rescue, they offered a competition with a single prize and 50 consolation graves, then hid the rules from everyone forced to compete. A silo could live for centuries in relative peace, and still be marked for death, simply because another silo scored higher. Its thousands of lives ended not for any failure of their own, but because the game only had room for one winner. Survival, under this theory, was never promised, only dangled. For the heroes of the story, this raises the stakes beyond any single silo's freedom. If the endgame is real, then saving Silo 18 alone still leaves 50 other populations trapped in the same deadly contest, and true victory would mean exposing and breaking the whole design. Juliet's journey between silos, her discovery that others exist, may be the first step toward the only ending that actually matters, a refusal to let the Founders' game run to its planned conclusion. The real fight may not be to win the contest, but to end it. Theory 10. Seed and the world that waits. Against all the darkness sits one of the more hopeful theories, and it comes from the same source as the grimmest ones. In the books, survivors eventually learn that the world beyond the toxic dust has already healed, and that the Founders prepared a place for a chosen few to begin again, a safe zone stocked with the tools and materials needed to rebuild a civilization. That place carries the quiet name of Seed, and it represents the one gentle idea inside an otherwise merciless plan, that after everything, humanity was always meant to return to the surface. The theory suggests that Seed is the true destination the whole system points toward, the prize at the end of the long experiment. If only one silo is meant to inherit the world, then that silo's reward would be a guided path to a prepared sanctuary, a head start on rebuilding rather than a bare and hostile wilderness. Under this reading, the Founders were not only culling populations, they were also planting a garden, setting aside seeds, knowledge, and shelter, so that whichever group survived would not simply live, but flourish. Cruelty and care sit side by side in the same design. Seed also gives the poisoned ring around the silos a new purpose. If the wider world has recovered, and only the zones near the silos remain deadly, then the toxic barrier is not just a prison wall, it is a filter, meant to keep people inside until the moment the Founders judge them ready to leave. The danger outside becomes a gate rather than a grave, sealed shut for centuries, and designed to open only on the Founders' schedule. What looks like a dead planet from inside the silo may in fact be a waiting one, patient and green just beyond the reach of the cameras. For the residents, the existence of a place like Seed would rewrite the meaning of every lie they were told. They were raised to believe the surface was gone forever, that the silo was the last refuge of life, when in truth a living world may have been waiting for generations, kept from them by choice. The cruelty is not only that they were imprisoned, but that a home was held in reserve, while they were told no home existed. Hope, under this theory, was the thing the silo hid most carefully of all. The idea of Seed reframes Juliet's defiance as something larger than escape. When she walks over the hill and survives, she is not just proving the silo lied, she is taking the first real step toward the world the Founders reserved for a chosen few, reaching for a future that was never supposed to be hers to claim. Her refusal to clean becomes a refusal to wait for permission, an early and unsanctioned move toward the very destination the whole system was built around. She is trying to reach the garden without being chosen. If Seed is real within the show, it offers the series a genuine light at the end of its long darkness. The story could be building not only toward the exposure of the Founders and the breaking of the game, but toward an actual return to a living world, a homecoming centuries in the making. The theory holds that the surface was never truly lost, only locked away, and that somewhere beyond the poisoned hills, the world has been quietly waiting for its people to find the courage and the truth to come home. Theory 11. The water, the memory, and population control. Some of the silo's cruelest tools are aimed not at the body, but at the mind, and a cluster of theories grows around how completely the population has been managed. The show confirms that something is added to the silo's water to dull memory, a discovery that comes through Gloria Hildebrandt, who grows lucid and able to speak the truth only once she has been kept off the treated supply. That single detail suggests the fog hanging over the whole population is not natural forgetfulness, but a chemical leash, a way to keep people from remembering too much of the world or of their own past. The memory theory runs deeper than simple forgetting. If the water can dull recollection, it can also help erase the story of the Great Rebellion roughly 140 years before the show. The uprising that led the silo to wipe its records almost clean. A population that cannot hold on to its history is a population that cannot learn from it, cannot pass down the truth, and cannot build the kind of collective memory that fuels resistance. Under this theory, the drugged water and the erased archives work together as a single machine for keeping the past out of reach, generation after generation. Alongside memory sits the silo's control over birth. And here the theories turn grimmer still. The show confirms forced sterilizations carried out under the cover of routine medicine, with Juliet's own father among the doctors who performed them, often against people tied to the Flamekeepers. The stated system of lotteries and permissions to have children already gives the silo enormous power over who gets to exist, and the sterilizations reveal that power being used as a weapon, quietly ending family lines the silo wanted gone. Population control in the silo is not only about numbers, it is about bloodlines. The theory ties these threads into a single purpose: keeping the population the right size, the right temperament, and the right level of ignorance for the experiment to continue. Too many people would strain the silo, too much memory would spark rebellion, and the wrong families might carry the stubbornness or the knowledge that leads to uprisings. So each is managed in turn. The water handles memory, the lottery and the sterilizations handle blood, and the lie about the outside handles hope. 3 overlapping systems keeping the population docile and contained. Nothing about the silo's calm is accidental. There is a targeted cruelty in who the silo chooses to erase. The Flamekeepers were the keepers of relics and memory, the people most likely to preserve the truth about the world before, which made them exactly the line the silo most wanted to end. By sterilizing and erasing them, the silo was not just controlling population, it was pruning away the very people who might one day remember and resist. Juliet, named as the last of that thread, becomes the living proof that the pruning was never quite complete, the one seed the silo failed to stamp out. Put together, these tools reveal a silo that reaches into the most private corners of a person's life, their memories, their families, their children, and shapes them all toward obedience. The residents believe they are simply living, marrying, forgetting, and moving on as anyone would, never suspecting how much of that ordinary life has been engineered from above. The theory suggests that the deepest prison in the silo is not the concrete around it, but the quiet management of the mind and the body, a control so complete that most people never feel the hand that holds them. Theory 12. Bernard, true believer or puppet. Bernard Holland is the face of the silo's power, and the theories about him split along a single question: whether he is the true villain or simply the most convincing servant of a villain we have not fully met. On the surface he rules it, holds the mayor's office, and guards the deepest secrets, which makes him look like the man in charge. Look closer, and a different picture appears, of someone who follows rules he did not write, protects a system he did not build, and answers, perhaps, to authorities far above his station. The most sympathetic theory casts Bernard as a true believer, trapped by knowledge. He has seen what the safeguard can do. He understands that a silo one rebellion away from annihilation cannot afford to relax, and he has convinced himself that his cruelty is the price of keeping 10,000 people alive. Under this reading, Bernard is not evil so much as broken by responsibility, a man who traded his own decency for the survival of the many and now cannot imagine loosening his grip even slightly. Every terrible thing he does while believing there is no other choice. A colder theory strips away the sympathy and casts Bernard as a knowing enforcer of a monstrous plan. He may understand the full truth, the engineered end of the world, the contest between silos, the culling built into the design, and choose to serve it anyway because service keeps him powerful and alive. In this version, his talk of protecting people is just the same lie the founders told, passed down and repeated by a man who benefits from it, and his calm reason is the mask of someone who decided long ago which side of the truth he wanted to stand on. He is not trapped by the system, he is loyal to it. The puppet theory adds another layer by tying Bernard to whatever sits above his silo. If a control silo and an algorithm truly oversee the network, then Bernard is not the top of the pyramid, but a middle link, receiving orders and secrets from powers he may never see and enforcing them on people who think he is the ultimate authority. His fierce protection of the vault, the legacy, and the rules would then be obedience rather than command, the loyalty of a caretaker who knows he is being watched. The man everyone in Silo 18 fears would himself be living in fear of something higher. His likely death in the burning airlock complicates every version of the theory. Bernard follows Juliet into that chamber, a broken man, his order collapsing around him, and the fire seems to end the reign of the silo's most powerful figure. If he dies, the show loses its clearest human villain, just as the true, larger enemy begins to come into view, which fits the idea that Bernard was always a stand-in for a deeper power. His fall may clear the stage for the real masters of the silo to finally step forward, the ones he served all along. Whatever the truth of Bernard, he works because he is never quite a cartoon. He can be cruel and calculating in one scene and genuinely burdened in the next. A man who might be a monster or might be the most damaged victim of all, depending on how much he truly knew and how much he was told. The theories about him are really theories about the silo itself, about whether its evil belongs to individuals or to a system so old and so complete that even its rulers are just cogs. Bernard is the question of guilt, given a calm voice and a careful face. Theory 13. Juliet, and why she survives. Juliet Nichols survives things no one in the silo is supposed to survive, and that pattern has fueled a whole family of theories about who she really is. She lives through a walk across the poisoned surface, through a desperate dive into freezing black water, and through a burning airlock that should have killed her, again and again reaching the far side of situations built to be fatal. The simplest explanation is her skill and her stubbornness, yet the sheer frequency of her survival has led many to wonder whether something larger is at work in her story. The grounded theory keeps Juliet entirely human and credits engineering rather than destiny. She lives on the surface because she has real heat tape instead of the sabotaged kind. She survives the dive because she understands machines and pressure better than anyone, and she endures the airlock because she thought ahead and wore a suit built to take heat. Under this reading, Juliet is not chosen or special in any mystical sense. She is simply the one person clever and determined enough to beat a system that relies on people being ignorant. Her survival is a triumph of knowledge, not fate. A bolder theory wonders whether Juliet carries something the silo does not expect, whether through her family, her biology, or sheer statistical inevitability, she is the person the system cannot account for. Fans point to her mother, a doctor whose hidden work and tragic end still hang over the story, and wonder whether Juliet inherited more than grief, perhaps knowledge, perhaps a resistance, perhaps a place in a design she does not yet understand. The silo tried to erase the Flamekeepers and their line, and Juliet is named the last of that thread, which hints that she may matter to the Founder's plan in ways no one has spelled out. There is also a narrative theory that Juliet is the flaw the whole experiment was always going to produce. A system that runs for centuries, controlling thousands of lives across dozens of silos, is a system that must eventually generate one person stubborn enough, skilled enough, and lucky enough to break it. Under this reading, Juliet is not a chosen one, but an inevitable one. The crack that appears in any structure given enough time, the single variable the Founders could never fully suppress. The silo did not fail to stop a hero. It failed to stop the odds. Her role in what comes next is where the theories turn forward. If one silo is meant to survive, or if the Founders' game is meant to be broken, Juliet is positioned better than anyone to be the person who forces the ending, the one who has walked between silos, seen the truth, and refused every lie. Whether she becomes the savior of her people, the destroyer of the whole system, or something more complicated, her survival keeps setting her up as the hinge the story turns on. The show keeps her alive because the story cannot end without her. The memory loss that opens the newest chapter adds a cruel twist to all of it. Juliet may survive the fire, only to lose the very truth she nearly died to uncover, which would test every theory about her at once, asking whether her importance lives in what she knows or in who she is. A Juliet who cannot remember why she fought would have to find her way back to the truth all over again, and the fact that the story is willing to take her memory suggests it trusts her to matter, even stripped of everything she learned. Her survival, it seems, was never the end of her trial. Theory 14. The Pez dispenser and the tangled timeline. Of all the clues the show has dropped, none has excited fans quite like a small, ordinary toy. In the before times scene, the Congressman Daniel Keene hands the journalist Helen Drew a simple Pez dispenser, a throwaway object from the old world, and that same dispenser later turns up as a relic inside the silo centuries afterward. A cheap piece of plastic becomes a bridge across 350 years, and the theories rush in to explain how an object from the founding era ended up in the hands of people who should know nothing about it. The leading theory holds that the dispenser proves a direct, personal link between the founders and the silo's population. If Helen received that object in the old world and it survives inside the silo, then Helen, or someone very close to her, likely became part of the silo itself, carrying the toy down into the new world as a private keepsake. Under this reading, the people who built the silos did not simply design them from a distance. Some of them, or their loved ones, went inside, which means the founders and the residents may share blood and history far more directly than anyone suspected. This idea reframes the before times storyline as more than a history lesson. Helen Drew, the journalist asking uncomfortable questions about whether the attack was even real, may be an ancestor of someone we already know, or even a hidden key to the silo's founding. Her curiosity echoing down the centuries in characters like Juliet. The show's choice to spend precious finale minutes on her suggests she is not a background figure, but a seed planted for the future, a person whose story will grow to explain how the silo came to be and who was chosen to enter it. The past is being set up to reach directly into the present. The dispenser also raises questions about how relics move and what they mean. The silo tightly controls forbidden objects from the old world, treating them as dangerous, and yet this one survived long enough to become a clue, which hints that certain relics may have been preserved on purpose, passed down through families, or hidden by the flamekeepers as fragments of the truth. An object like the Pez dispenser could be more than a memento. It could be a message, a physical thread connecting the people inside to a past the silo tried to erase. The relics may be the truth the water cannot wash away. Some fans push the timeline theory further, wondering whether the show is building toward a reveal that collapses the distance between eras entirely. If the founders worked in shifts and slept for decades in a control silo, then some of the very people from the before times could still be alive in the present, the same minds that lived through the apocalypse, now watching over its survivors. The Pez dispenser, in that light, is not a relic of dead ancestors, but a possession of people who may still be breathing, a chilling hint that the founding era never truly ended. The past and present of the silo may overlap in ways the residents cannot imagine. However the mystery resolves, the dispenser works because it makes an enormous story feel intimate. A weapon, a conspiracy, and the end of the world are vast and hard to hold. But a small toy passed between two people is something a viewer can carry, and the show uses it to promise that all the grand machinery traces back to human hands and human choices. The theory that a single relic ties the founders to the residents turns the whole series into one long thread, waiting to be followed back to the moment it began. Everything, it suggests, connects. Theory 15. Salvador Quinn, the legacy and the hidden message. Deep in the vault beneath Silo 18 sits the legacy, a preserved archive of the world before, and among its treasures, Lucas uncovers a puzzle that points straight at the silo's founding. A coded letter connected to a figure from the earliest days, a name called Salvador Quinn, appears to be written as a book cipher, where numbers stand for specific words on specific pages of a particular book. To read it, Lucas would need that exact book, almost certainly a forbidden relic hidden somewhere in the silo, which turns the message into a treasure hunt across the very objects the silo tries to destroy. The leading theory treats Salvador Quinn as a thread reaching back to the people who built everything. A founder, an early leader, or an original shadow, Quinn may have left behind a warning, a confession, or a set of instructions meant only for whoever grew curious and capable enough to find them. The cipher's design says a great deal, because hiding a message in a book means trusting that the right kind of person, a reader, a seeker, someone like Lucas, will eventually come looking. The founders may have planted secrets specifically for the rare mind that refuses to stop asking questions. The choice of a book cipher carries its own meaning for the theory-minded. Books are relics, controlled and forbidden, which means the founders hid the truth inside the exact category of object the silo works hardest to suppress, ensuring that only someone willing to break the rules could ever read it. The truth, in this design, is protected not by a lock, but by obedience, sealed away behind the resident's own trained fear of the past. Anyone loyal enough to avoid forbidden books is loyal enough to never learn the truth, and that may be precisely the point. The legacy itself deepens the mystery around what the founders wanted. Why preserve humanity's art, music, and history at all? Why keep the memory of the old world alive in a hidden vault? If the plan was simply to control and cull the population, the theory suggests the founders were divided, or at least conflicted, that some part of the design was meant to carry the truth forward for a future generation deemed ready to receive it. The legacy would then be a time capsule as much as a secret, a promise that one day the lie might end and the real story might be told. Lucas becomes central to this theory because he is the kind of person the hidden message seems built for. Curious, patient, and drawn to the sky and the past, he is exactly the sort of mind the founders may have expected and feared would eventually crack the code. His journey from stargazer to shadow to codebreaker mirrors the path the cipher demands, and his discoveries may be the beginning of the truth working its way out of the vault and into the hands of people who can act on it. The founders built a lock, and Lucas may be the key they never wanted to exist. Where the message ultimately leads is the open question that keeps the theory alive. It might reveal the true purpose of the silos, the location of a control silo, the date of the endgame, or a way to break the safeguard, any of which would shift the balance of the whole story. Salvador Quinn's letter sits like a sealed envelope at the center of the mystery, addressed to the future, and waiting for someone brave enough to open it. Whatever it says, the theory holds that it was left on purpose by someone who wanted the truth to survive. Theory 16. Solo, Silo 17, and the Survivors. Silo 17 is the show's window into what happens when a silo dies, and Solo is its lonely, damaged heart, which makes both the subject of tender and unsettling theories. Solo, whose real name is Jimmy Conroy, survived the fall of his silo as a boy by hiding behind a sealed vault door while the safeguard poisoned everyone else, and he then lived alone for decades in a drowned and silent tower. The obvious question the theories chase is how much of the Solo we meet is the truth, because a man who has spent that long alone, telling himself stories to survive, is not a reliable narrator of his own past. The first cluster of theories circles Solo's honesty. When Juliet arrives, Solo lies to her, claiming there are others with him, and hiding the full reality of his isolation, and fans wonder what else he has hidden or reshaped over the years. Some suspect Solo did something during the fall of Silo 17 that he cannot face, that his loneliness is tangled with guilt, perhaps over resources he kept while others died, or choices he made to survive. The young survivors elsewhere in the silo clearly hold a grudge against him, which hints that Solo's decades alone may be as much a punishment as a tragedy. The survivors themselves, the feral young people led by a teenager named Rickson, open a second line of theory. Children when the catastrophe struck, raised without adults or rules, they represent a different kind of experiment, a glimpse of what humanity becomes when the silo's control vanishes entirely. Some fans read them as a warning, and others as a strange kind of hope, a proof that people can endure even total collapse, and their eventual relationship with Juliet and Solo may shape whether Silo 17 becomes a graveyard or the seed of something new. They are the silo without its cage, for better and for worse. Silo 17 as a place carries its own theories because it is a mirror of Silo 18 in every detail. The same layout, the same staircase, the same departments. That sameness lets the show ask a haunting question, whether Silo 18 is looking at its own possible future, a preview of what happens if a rebellion goes too far and the safeguard falls. Under this reading, Silo 17 is not just a ruined neighbor, but a warning written in water and silence, a version of home where the worst has already happened. Every step Juliet takes through it is a step through what her own people narrowly avoided. Solo's future is where the theories turn hopeful again. His slow, careful friendship with Juliet begins to draw him back toward the world of the living, and fans see in him the possibility of healing, a chance that the damage done by the safeguard is not entirely permanent. If Silo 17 becomes a refuge, a base, or even a new beginning for those who escaped the Founder's game, Solo could move from being the last survivor of a dead silo to a founding figure of something better. The man the system left behind may yet help build the thing that breaks it. Taken together, the theories about Solo and Silo 17 give the show its emotional proof of everything the larger conspiracy costs. The Founder's plan is vast and abstract, but Solo is a single human face on it, a boy who lost everything to a rule he never knew existed, and grew into a lonely man talking to himself in the dark. Whatever secrets he still hides, and whatever becomes of the survivors around him, Silo 17 stands as the clearest evidence of what the silos truly are, and of what it costs when the machinery decides a population has failed. Theory 17. The shadows and what the truth does to them. The silo keeps its deepest secrets through a strange kind of apprenticeship. The role of the shadow and the theories around it reveal how the truth itself becomes a weapon. A shadow is chosen to one day inherit leadership and the full knowledge behind the silo, trained in secret and given access to the vault, the legacy, and the real reason everything exists. What the show quietly demonstrates is that learning this truth almost never leaves a person whole, which turns the shadow system into a study of how dangerous real knowledge can be inside a world built on lies. Judge Mary Meadows is the clearest evidence for this theory. Long before the story begins, Meadows was herself a shadow who learnt the truth of the silo, and the woman we meet is what that knowledge left behind, cold, hollowed out, and dulled by the silo's drugs. Behind her authority sits someone who saw the whole design and could not carry it, a warning of what waits for anyone who reaches the center of the mystery. The theory holds that Meadows is not simply a villain of Judicial, but a casualty, a person the truth broke, and the silo then propped up as an enforcer. Lucas gives the theory a second, living example. When he finally learns about the safeguard and the true nature of the silo, the bright and curious young man collapses inward, losing the wonder that once drove him and stepping back from the role of shadow entirely. The pattern repeats, that the people most eager to understand are the ones most devastated by understanding, which suggests the truth of the silo is designed to be unbearable, a burden that isolates whoever carries it. Knowledge in the silo does not set people free, it cuts them off from everyone who still believes the lie. This dynamic points to a deliberate feature of the Founder's design. If the truth is crushing enough, then anyone who learns it becomes less likely to share it, not out of loyalty, but out of despair, weighed down by the sense that nothing can be done. The shadow system may work precisely because the truth polices itself, breaking its keepers so thoroughly that they guard the secret simply because they can no longer imagine an alternative. The founders would then have built not just a physical prison, but a psychological one, where knowing the truth traps you as surely as never knowing it. Bernard, in this light, becomes the rare shadow who did not break, or who broke in a different way. Where Meadows went cold, and Lucas recoiled, Bernard absorbed the truth and turned it into ruthless purpose, which may be exactly why he rose to the top. Because the system needs at least one keeper who can carry the weight without collapsing. The theory suggests that leadership in the silo selects for a particular kind of damage, the ability to know the worst and still enforce it, which makes the strongest leaders the ones most warped by what they know. Survival at the top requires a specific wound. The shadow theory casts the whole struggle of the silo as a war over who can bear the truth and what they do with it. Juliet threatens the system not only because she uncovers secrets, but because she refuses to be broken by them, carrying the truth as fuel rather than as a burden. If the founder's design depends on knowledge crushing whoever finds it, then a person who learns everything and keeps fighting is the one thing the system was never built to handle. The most dangerous thing in the silo may simply be someone who knows the worst and still hopes. Theory 18. The Pact and the Hidden Order. Every life in the silo is governed by the Pact, the rulebook that decides what is legal, who may have children, and what happens to anyone who breaks the rules, and the residents treat it as the bedrock of their world. A strong theory holds that the Pact the people know is only the surface, and that beneath it lies a second, secret set of instructions meant for the silo's leaders alone. This hidden layer would tell the keepers what to do in a crisis, how to respond to rebellion, and when to reach for the safeguard, a private playbook written by the founders and passed down through the shadows. The theory draws strength from how precisely the silo responds to danger. When a rebellion grows, the reaction is not improvised panic, but a practiced sequence of crackdowns, lies, and, if needed, extermination, which suggests the leaders are following a script prepared in advance. Someone, long ago, anticipated exactly how a silo might come apart, and wrote down the steps for holding it together or wiping it clean, and that foresight points to a document the ordinary pact never mentions. The rules the people obey and the rules the leaders follow may be two very different books. This hidden order would explain the strange calm of figures like Bernard in moments of crisis. Faced with an uprising that would terrify anyone, Bernard often acts as though he already knows the ending, because in a sense he might, guided by instructions that tell him what a keeper is meant to do when the silo threatens to break. His authority would then flow not from his own judgment, but from his access to the secret text. The way a priest draws power from scripture, the congregation is forbidden to read. To hold the hidden order is to hold the true power of the silo. The theory also reframes the pact itself as a tool of control rather than a social contract, presented to the people as protection, a fair set of rules for a fragile community. The pact may in truth be designed to keep the population manageable and the experiment stable, every clause serving the founder's plan rather than the residents' well-being. The lottery, the punishments, the treatment of relics, all could be less about justice and more about keeping the silo running the way the founders intended. What looks like law from the inside may be programming from the outside. If a hidden order exists, finding it would be as dangerous as finding any other secret, because it would expose not just the rules, but the reasons behind them. A resident who read the leader's true instructions would learn what the keepers fear, how the safeguard is triggered, and perhaps how it might be stopped, turning the founder's own playbook into a weapon against them. The same document that lets the leaders control the silo could, in the right hands, become the map to breaking that control. The theory suggests the deepest rebellion would begin not with a bomb, but with a book. The idea of a layered rulebook fits the silo's whole design, where nothing is quite what it seems, and every surface hides a deeper mechanism. The people obey a pact they believe protects them. The leaders follow an order they know controls them. And above both may sit the founders and the algorithm enforcing a plan neither group fully sees. Peeling back each layer reveals another, and the hidden order would be one more step down toward the true purpose of it all. The silo runs on rules, and the most important rules are the ones no one is allowed to read. Theory 19. The mechanics of the lie. The silo's greatest achievement is not the concrete or the machines. It is the lie, and a set of quieter theories tries to map exactly how that lie is maintained day after day. The most visible piece is the great screen in the cafeteria, showing a fixed image of a grey, dead surface that every resident accepts as a live window on the world. If the outside is healed, then that image is a recording or a manufactured feed, a single false picture standing in for reality. And controlling it means controlling what an entire population believes about their world. Whoever runs the screen runs the truth. The cameras and surveillance form the second layer, and here the theories turn toward how completely the silo watches its own people. Judicial monitors residents through hidden cameras, building cases, and steering blame, which means the silo sees far more than the residents ever suspect. Some fans wonder just how deep that surveillance runs, whether every room, every conversation, every private moment is observed and recorded, feeding the algorithm the data it needs to predict rebellion. The lie is not only about hiding the outside, it is about exposing the inside, watching everyone closely enough to catch a rebellion before it starts. Then there are the Lights Lucas charts at night, one of the show's most tantalizing small mysteries. Drawn to the faint points that appear on the great screen after dark, Lucas maps them like stars, and the theories split over what he is actually seeing. Some believe the lights are genuine stars, proof that the screen shows a real sky and that the world above is more open than the silo admits. Others suspect the lights are the surface installations of the other silos, distant signs of the neighbors the residents are never told exist, or even activity from a control silo, glowing quietly in the dark for anyone curious enough to look up. The relics form another thread in the mechanics of the lie, because they are the physical truth the silo cannot fully erase. Objects from the old world, watches, magazines, toys, carry evidence of a different reality, and the silo's fierce control of them shows how dangerous a single honest artifact can be. The theory holds that relics are policed so heavily precisely because they cannot be argued with. A green world in a magazine, or a working device from before, is proof that outlasts any lie. The Flamekeepers understood this, which is why they became keepers of relics, guardians of the one kind of truth the water and the screens could not reach. Underneath all of it runs the deepest tool, the manipulation of belief itself. The drugged water dulls memory, the erased history removes context, the fake screen removes evidence, and the fear of cleaning removes the will to test any of it, so that the lie is defended from every direction at once. No single trick holds the silo together, but woven together they form a net so complete that most residents never feel its edges. The theory suggests the silo's true genius is redundancy, that even if one lie fails, 3 others remain to catch the doubt before it spreads. Understanding the mechanics of the lie reveals why breaking it is so hard and so dangerous. To free the silo, someone would have to defeat not one deception, but a whole system of them: the screen, the cameras, the water, the relics, the fear, each reinforcing the others. Juliet's power comes from attacking the foundation directly, by physically walking outside and surviving, proving with her own body what no argument could. The lie is vast, but it rests on a single claim, that the outside means death, and the moment that claim cracks, the whole structure begins to shake. Theory 20. The tunnels, and whether the silos could ever unite. The reveal that the silos are connected by tunnels turns 51 isolated worlds into a single hidden network, and the theories that follow ask a thrilling question: what would happen if the silos ever found each other? For now, each silo believes it is alone, kept ignorant of its neighbors by design. But the tunnels prove that the separation is a choice rather than a fact of geography. Somewhere beneath the poisoned ground, the silos are already linked, waiting like rooms in a house whose residents have never been allowed to open the doors between them. The founders clearly feared exactly this, and the theory reads the enforced isolation as their greatest vulnerability, disguised as a rule. 51 populations kept apart, of 51 manageable experiments, but 51 populations working together would be an army, a movement, a force far beyond anything a single silo's leadership could contain. If the residents ever learned the truth and reached across the tunnels to one another, the whole structure of control would be at risk, which is why the silos are kept not just physically separated, but mentally convinced that no one else exists. Ignorance is the real wall, and the tunnels are the crack in it. Juliet's journey makes this theory feel urgent rather than abstract. She has already crossed from one silo to another, walked between worlds, and learnt firsthand that the neighbors are real, which makes her the first bridge in a network built to have none. Under this theory, her importance is not only that she survives, but that she connects, carrying the knowledge of other silos with her, and threatening to become the link the founders most dreaded. A single person who has stood inside two silos is a person who can prove to each that the other is real, and that proof is a spark near a great deal of dry tinder. The dangers of contact run both ways, and the theory does not pretend unity would be simple. Silos raised in isolation, each with its own fears and rulers, might meet as strangers or even enemies, and the founders may have counted on that mistrust as another layer of separation. If the endgame truly pits the silos against one another in a contest only one can win, then the populations might be turned into rivals, taught to see each other as threats to their own survival rather than partners in escape. The tunnels could carry cooperation, or they could carry a war between silos that never knew they were siblings. There is also the question of what waits in the tunnels themselves. A network linking 51 silos is a network someone built and someone controls, and the theory wonders what guards those passages, what the algorithm sees moving through them, and whether a control silo sits at the hub of it all. The tunnels are not just empty corridors between worlds, they are part of the machine, and traveling them may mean stepping closer to the true center of the system, the place where the founder's power actually lives. To walk the tunnels may be to walk toward the heart of the conspiracy. If the silos ever do unite, the theory suggests it would be the true turning point of the entire story. The moment the founder's design finally faces the one thing it was built to prevent. A single silo can be lied to, watched, and if necessary erased, but a network of silos awake and joined together would be something the system has no answer for. The tunnels that were meant to keep the silos secretly linked for control could become the roads to their freedom, and the isolation that has held for centuries could end with a single population reaching out and finding a hand reaching back. Theory 21. Were the founders right? Beneath all the plot theories sits a harder one, a moral question the show keeps circling: whether the founders, monstrous as they are, might have been right. If the world truly faced an unstoppable threat, engineered machines, or a war that would have ended everyone, then the people who built the silos may have believed they were making the only choice that saved the species at all. The theory does not excuse them. It asks something more uncomfortable: whether a horror on this scale could ever be the lesser evil, and whether the residents owe their existence to a crime. The case for the founders runs along cold logic. If humanity was going to be destroyed regardless, then preserving a chosen remnant underground, even through lies and control, kept the human story alive when the alternative was nothing at all. The silos, the pact, even the safeguard, could be defended as the brutal machinery of survival, the price of carrying a species through centuries of a poisoned world. From that view, the founders were not villains, but triage doctors on a planetary scale, deciding who to save when they could not save everyone, and living with the blood that choice required. The case against them is just as strong, and far more human. Even if some catastrophe was coming, The founders chose deception over honesty, control over freedom, and a rigged contest over any attempt to let people face the truth together. They did not simply save a remnant, they enslaved it, stripping generations of their history, their memory, and their right to know the world they lived in, all to keep a plan running smoothly. A rescue that requires drugged water, forced sterilizations, and the gassing of entire silos is not a rescue at all. It is a prison dressed as an ark, and no threat fully excuses that. The show sharpens the question by making the founders' heirs believe their own justification. Bernard, and perhaps the watchers above him, act as though the lie is mercy, genuinely convinced that the truth would destroy the people they control, and that conviction is what makes them dangerous, rather than simply cruel. The theory suggests the real horror is not that evil people built the silo, but that people who thought they were doing good built it, and that their descendants still think so. A villain who believes he is a savior will never stop, because in his own mind he has never done wrong. This is where the story asks the audience to choose, and where the theories become personal. Some viewers find a bleak sympathy for the founders, imagining the impossible weight of deciding humanity's fate, while others see only an unforgivable arrogance, the belief that a few people had the right to lie to millions for centuries. The show seems to want that discomfort, to make us feel the pull of the founders' logic, even as we recoil from what it produced. The silo is horrifying precisely because it is not senseless, because a person could almost talk themselves into building it. However each viewer lands, the question shapes what a satisfying ending would even look like. If the founders were purely evil, then the story simply needs their defeat. But if they were partly right, then tearing down the silo carries real risk, the chance that the truth really is deadly, and freedom really does doom the survivors. Juliet's fight is not only against liars, it is against the possibility that the liars had a point, and the deepest tension of the show may be whether the truth can be survived at all. The founders' greatest defense is that they might not have been wrong. Theory 22. What Season 3 and beyond may reveal. With the newest season now unfolding, several long-running theories are finally being tested, and the predictions have never been richer. The show has confirmed that Juliet survives the airlock, but returns changed, carrying a memory loss that leaves even her own past uncertain, which sets up a strange new struggle. A hero who forgot the truth she nearly died for would have to rediscover it, and the theory holds that her journey back to knowledge will let the show retell its own secrets through fresh eyes, testing whether Juliet matters for what she knows or for who she is. The strange black substance tied to the outside is the second thread fans are watching closely. Its arrival seems to confirm the oldest and biggest theory of all, that the true threat to the world was engineered and technological rather than a simple bomb, and that the poison around the silos is something built and maintained rather than natural. If the season follows this path, the dirty bomb of the before times will be revealed as only the public face of the disaster, with the real story hiding in machines too small to see. The nanobot theory, long drawn from the books, may finally step onto the screen in the show's own form. The before times storyline is expected to move from a brief glimpse into a full thread of its own. Helen Drew and Daniel Keene, the journalist and the congressman from the founding era, are positioned to carry the story of how and why the silos were built, pulling the deep past into the present and answering the question of who the founders truly were. The theory holds that this timeline will slowly converge with the present, explaining the Pez dispenser, the cipher, and the design of the whole system, until the origin of the silos and the fate of their survivors become a single connected story. The founding is no longer background, it is becoming a main event. Bigger structural reveals may be waiting as well. Fans expect the show to eventually confirm or deny the control silo, to show what sits at the center of the tunnel network, and to reveal how much of the book's design, the shifts, the cryo-sleep, the endgame, the show intends to use. Each confirmation would reshape the stakes, turning the fight inside a single silo into a struggle over the entire system. and the theory holds that the series is building patiently toward that widening of scope. The story that began with one woman and one murder is preparing to become the story of a whole hidden civilization. The fate of the other silos hangs over all of it. Silo 17 showed what death looks like. Silo 18 has shown rebellion, and the remaining silos are still almost entirely unknown, which leaves enormous room for the story to grow outward. The theory holds that the future of the show lies in the space between the silos, in the tunnels, the network, and the question of whether these isolated worlds will ever learn of one another. Juliet, already a traveler between silos, may become the thread that finally ties them together, for rescue or for war. Whatever the coming seasons confirm, the pleasure of the theories is that the show has earned them, planting its clues carefully enough that fans can reason their way toward the truth. The black substance, the memory loss, the founders in Washington, the tunnels beneath the ground, all point toward answers that feel both surprising and inevitable, the mark of a mystery told with real patience. The silo has spent years asking its questions, and the theory, in the end, is simply the joy of trying to answer them before the show does.